Thank you. Thanks for coming. I've been a professional photographer for, gosh, well, let's see, it was 20 years, but this is my 29th WPPI. Show you how old I am. And I've seen a lot of things come and go. When I first came here, I was shooting Hasselblads, and we saw so many different innovations. And then for a long time, things became quite boring because there was not a lot of breakthrough in technology. I am a camera accessories manufacturer, and one of the jobs that I have is to test and understand the gear. So you can see right up here on the screen is not all the cameras that I have, but some of them. I have everything. I have complete Nikon systems, complete Canon systems. These are all Canon L series lenses or Nikon bodies, 7100, 7D Mark II Canons, Pentax, Olympus. The ones that I shoot for me are only Sony, and this came about, I think, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I'm just a huge fan of their stuff, so whenever it came time, they came out with a new camera and I became such a fan of it, I would say, can I please take your podium? Can I please talk about how great your stuff is? And then it became into a friendship where I just talk a lot with the fans at Sony, and now we've started to do a lot of educational products on Sony. We have SonyA6000.com. On GaryFong.com we have complete tutorials on many of these cameras with what we now have, a virtual camera. So when you go to GaryFong.com, you'll literally see the back of a camera, and these buttons all work. And they'll be able to teach you what the functions do, how to best shoot sports, how to best shoot action, and how to best shoot panorama, portraiture, or wildlife. And the reason why I went into doing all of that is because these things were so filled with technology, but it took a while for me to figure out how to use it. Now, here's for example, I'd say all of my friends are very, very serious professional photographers. I'd say, you know what, hey, Robert Evans, who I introduced to Sony, Mike Cologne, who I introduced to Sony, both Sony Artisans, I'd say, hey, check out my Sony A6000. And they'd pick it up and they go, huh, what do I do here? And you know what they would do? They would immediately dumb it down so that it would be like their Canon or their Nikon cameras. What do I mean by dumb it down? Well, they would turn it into back button autofocus, and they would let the joystick maybe pick the focus spot. Or maybe they would do a focus and recompose type of thing. All of that technology is way, way, way in the past. Now these cameras can focus lock on a moving object. It can do face registration, where you can, at the beginning of the wedding day, put face number 1, let's take a picture of the bride and call her number 1. Number 2 would be the groom, number 3 would be the maid of honor, and when you're shooting into a crowd, it'll say, well, maid of honor is not here, but the mother of the bride is here, so 3 is not here, but 4 is. It'll focus in priority of those people. There's so many innovations to this, but it takes a long time to figure it out. Secondly, these buttons on the back don't address many of the things that the camera will do. For example, eye autofocus. Whoever would have thought that a camera could find the eyeball in a shot, pick it, and focus on it? Those of us who shoot Canon and Nikon systems have to then move that joystick around, put that little focus spot on the eyeball, exposure lock, recompose, and then fire. Whereas with a Sony, I custom programmed the C1 button to be eye autofocus. I hit it, a little green dot magically appears over the eyeball. I'm shooting at f1.8 or f1.4, bam. It like nails the eyeball. The nose isn't in focus, the eyeball is in focus. If I'm doing face tracking and you're a wedding photographer, a lot of times when you're shooting with a Canon or a Nikon system and you put it on AI servo, you know what will happen when the bride's walking up the aisle? It will focus on the thing that's in the center and most in front. Canon will say that, Nikon will say that. This is what we call AI servo focus. Therefore, all of your pictures of the processional will be the bouquet in focus and the faces out of focus. So when you're at a wedding, you'll watch a wedding photographer do this. They'll do what I call the head nod. Because what they're doing is they're locking the focus on the face and they're recomposing so that the face isn't at the center of the square. All of those things make photography extremely slow and frustrating but we're so used to it, and we just accept that that's the way things are going to be. Until Sony came out with the ability to shoot with the electronic viewfinder. I think that was the thing that's the biggest. You know, everyone talks about, oh, mirrorless is awesome because the mirror's outdated. Look at how small this is and all that we can compact into it. Or say on the A7S, it has a silent shutter. This is something that you can't do with a mirrorless without live view. But the big innovation is that electronic viewfinder, because it allows you to focus right off the sensor and expose right off the sensor. So over here on the left are the Sony cameras that I've actually purchased for myself. And the reason why I'm doing this talk is because there's a lot of them. I joke about Sony comes out with a new Alpha every 16 minutes. And that's why I have so many people ask me, like, oh, what do I do now? Because every camera has its own tools that make it a serious piece of equipment. I'm going to show you the cameras that I use, when, why, and in the order that I use them most. Now, these two guys right here are my favorite cameras. This one is number one. This is the camera I use most of my life for almost everything, and what I love about it is the body's about $600. Now, the lens on it is not a toy. This is a Zeiss 55mm f1.8. This is about $1,000, and this is a G series 70-200. These are expensive glass. That's a nice thing. You can buy a very inexpensive body and the world's best glass, Zeiss lenses or Sony G series lenses. But this guy right here, world's fastest autofocus, 11 frames per second, focus tracking, focus points throughout a majority, I think it's 93% of the screen, so that your subject can run all around the screen and it'll track and hang on to that. This one right here is a full frame, and it's the highest ISO in the world. I've taken this and I'm going to show you on my iPhoto examples where I'm shooting this thing in a wedding, ISO 65,000. We're going to zoom in and I'm going to show you, even with noise reduction on, the JPEG artifacting is almost not there at 100,000. So let me go through the Sony Alpha line because there's a lot of them right now, and this is current. And this isn't just current on what's in the booth, this is what I personally own. This is Sony Alpha 6000. Again, $600 body, my favorite camera, fast autofocus, a complete joy to use. In fact, I think Robert Evans uses it the most. I know Brian Smith, the world's finest photographers. I did a video with my good friend Matthew Jordan Smith, and I forced him to use the A6000, and he was just exploding with enthusiasm. That one right there, if you're a Canon shooter, Nikon shooter, whatever, throw this in your bag just as a toy. Sometime during the party, whip it out and just do some grab shots, and then you'll find that you're going to slowly or fast, like in an overnight kind of thing, move over to the Sony line. This Alpha 77 is kind of outdated now. It's one of the first ones I used, became very excited about. A99 I still use. It's a full frame, translucent DSLR. The A77 II I use a lot still now. It's a DSLR style, but it is the fastest autofocus. 12 frames per second, shooting an f3.5. If you're shooting sports, wildlife, that's the one to use. And you know what's nice about it? The body's $1,000. 12 frames per second, APS sensor, 23 megapixels, $1,000. Go around to any of these other booths and say, what can you give me for $1,000? Nothing. Rebel T5, I don't know. But, okay, so that takes us out of here. Let's go into my favorite bodies in the order that they appear. The A7S, this thing is a marvel beyond compare. I have shot in areas that are so dark that I need the electronic viewfinder to guide me around the room. It's like watching The Hunt for Osama bin Laden or something like that. You can actually see better in the viewfinder than you can see in real life. And once you start shooting with electronic viewfinder, it's very difficult to shoot with optical, because optical is optical. We turn the lights down and you can't see anything. You turn the lights down on a A7S with a -3 exposure value, ability to focus, and I can walk around in the dark and not bump into furniture while shooting. Then comes the A7R, which is the 36 megapixel no anti-aliasing moire filter, widely known as the best image quality that you can get in the world of photography. So let's look at the suite of these cameras right now. $600, world's fastest autofocus. $1,000, 12 frames per second, incredible sports action camera, 23 megapixel. World's finest video quality, world's finest image quality for digital, and world's most sensitive ISO. All of them in a number of cameras. So now, from that point on, it becomes, what is it that you want to accomplish? So let me just show you some stuff. And I've got little, right over here, I've got little playlists that I did for the different cameras. Let's go first over to the A6000. The A6000, this is a sequence that I did. My wife was blowing bubbles out in our playground, and my children were going after trying to pop them. This is 11 frames per second. Now what I've done is I put the focus lock on my child's face. That's something that can be easily taught. Just go to Sony A6000 or any of my YouTube channels. I'll teach you how to do subject focus lock. But watch this. Boom! Look at the bubble go. Bang! And then look at him. He's just about to touch the bubble. Bang! Do you know how fun it is to shoot your children going around popping bubbles? Now, any lesser camera under AI Servo would have done this. It would have focused on the near bubble. It wouldn't have hung on to the face because it's not smart enough, because it's optical. The thing about on-sensor focusing and tracking is that it will remember the pattern of the thing that you're hanging on to. Optical doesn't do that. So if you say, hey camera, I want you to hang on to that as it's moving around. The optical is doing, it's got all these sensors, and Canon will try to do color-based recognition. I forgot what it's called. EOS intelligent tracking. The Nikon D4 does something like that, but it's not on-sensor electronic. So as we go through, look at this. Between these two, the bubble is now exploding, and then the bubble is now that thing. And now he's going around. The girl's not in focus, but she's closer to me. He's off center. My wife is way over here. We've got a meaningful photo. And that's why the A6000 is incredibly fun. 11 frames per second. Boom, 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 boom. Look at him. Bubbles going in front of his face. This bubble's not in focus. His eyeball's in focus. Bang, 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 bang. Now he goes around. This right here is Sony's soft, what's it called? Soft portrait. My wife doesn't need it. My daughter certainly doesn't need it. But what I want to do is show you some of the imaging processing that this has. Built in, you can do black and white, you can do sepia, you can do what I call pre-chimping. You can see exposure override in the eyepiece, and you can do these processing effects. This shot right here was done with the A7R. This was in the Hong Kong harbor. Look at the size of this. 7360 by 4144. That's 36 megapixels. And we go in really tight here, and we can go all the way in here, read the street signs, looking at people in the window, all the way from across the harbor, read the graphics. The 7R, when you pair it with a really cool lens, like this is the Zeiss 24-70 f4, the stuff that you're able to do is amazing. This right here is an example of why I love the electronic viewfinder. Intentional exposure override can be done while you're composing. Here's what you do with a regular optical camera. You take the picture, you look at it and go, ooh, blown out rear, the people are dark. You know what you can do with your Sony? You get your little dial wheel, your exposure override, and you sit there and you watch the background open up in your eyes until you get the composition you want, and then bam. And you say, oh, I want to do that in black and white. You just switch the creative style to black and white, and you've got yourself a black and white image. I cannot tell you how much fun it is to walk around with this little $600 camera, look inside this viewfinder, and just whip the controls around and compose your shot. Now this right here is a demonstration of tracking, and this is what makes action photography so much fun on the 6000. There's a thing called focus tracking lock. And if you go to SonyA6000.com or any of my videos on GaryFong.com, I'll teach you how to customize a button to make it 1, 2, 3 clicks, and then you're now tracking one thing. So I've got a bunch of skiers coming down the hill. I want the guy in yellow, and I don't want it to hop around. Any other camera will hop around to who? The closest one toward the center. When you put it on AI servo continuous, the optical camera will pick the one in the center and closest. But when you track on a digital electronic viewfinder, it will follow. Now look at the screen box. The skier is going left, right, left. I'm not doing anything. This thing's on a tripod. The camera is following the one that I hung on to. While that's happening, if I just lay down on that shutter button, 11 frames per second, pop, 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 all the way down into the hill, through busy high contrast trees with snow, you just got to try it. You have to try it. Yes? With video, it does exactly the same thing. It has the exact same technology. You'll see the exact same tracking. You can focus lock on video and it'll track. This actually is video, especially when you use the electronic curtain. When you think about what video is 24 or 60 frames per second going across that electronic sensor. This is 11 frames per second with a mechanical shutter that goes up and down capturing stills at 24 frames per second. But it's identical in video. Okay, now let's go to the A7 Mark II. This is a camera we rely on a lot for our portrait photography. You know what's neat about the 7 Mark II? It's an incredible video camera because of the 5-axis stabilization. It's night and day. Turn it on, put a long lens on it, and you'll see that it just doesn't do that jiggly thing. And what's really fun about the 7D Mark II, by the way, is my buddy who works for me, Justin, he's a cinematographer. He's got all these Canon lenses, and he has a Metabones adapter. He sticks that on the 7D Mark II, and all those old Canon lenses that have no image stabilization now have stabilization because it's in the body and it's 5-axis. So, but we use the 7D Mark II mostly for video, but we did a shoot last night doing really beautiful. Is this Gary Fong? Yes, iPhoto, that's me. But we did a before and after. This will be on my seminar on Wednesday at 3 p.m. I'm going to do a seminar on lighting. Okay, let's go to the 7R, and I'll show you what this one does. So 7R is fantastic if you're a wedding photographer and you're doing group shots. You're going to do a big wide spread of maybe a group, and man, you can get in here so tight. Look at the numbers on the top right there. 36 megapixels. This is a Zeiss 24-70 lens. Finest lens in the world, best image quality, all in one camera. So, I want to show you, if you're a wedding photographer, this is fun. Because for years, you've been missing all of the great shots because your dumb camera is picking the wrong thing to focus on. 11 frames per second, watch this. I now pronounce you husband and wife. And there's the kiss. Whap, 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 whap. And then here they come up the aisle. This will kill you if you're on a telephoto and you're shooting any other system, because I've got this thing tracking faces and he's coming right at me with a 70-200. You know what I do with a Canon or a Nikon? You've seen me at a wedding. I'm walking backwards, trying to walk the same speed they are because I don't want them to rack into my focus too much. This thing is on a tripod because I'm allowing them to come at me and I'm letting the face tracking come back. Now, when I counted this out, there was 36 images of the processional. I guarantee you, had I shot that with a Canon or Nikon, I'd have gotten 4. I know this because I've shot 1,000 weddings. This is all 36, and they can pick which one is the one that was the most amazing thing. All of these technologies are available to you at this moment right now with mirrorless, but most importantly, electronic viewfinder, because it allows you to focus track and do high-speed motor without the need of a mirror. And all of that is available right here, plus a zillion more features that I couldn't even have time to go into. Please visit GaryFong.com. I have 3 4-hour videos on many of these cameras. If you have an A6000, I have a virtual camera, it'll take you right through it. If you want to shoot portraits, I'll say this is exactly how to set it up for portrait. Go to Custom 1, set that up to focus lock. Go to Custom 2, set it up for autofocus. I'll tell you the lenses, I'll tell you everything to do. And then, but most of all, walk around the booths here, pick up the cameras, and just play with them. And if you don't have time to pick up the cameras, do this. Go to GaryFong.com, look for my virtual cameras, where you'll see this exact camera, and then push the buttons, and my virtual camera will show you what those buttons do, okay? Anyway, thanks Sony for having us out here. Enjoy those cameras.